King. I am a strategy and analytics consultant at IBM, and I'm part of IBM's lab for SAP Solutions. And here I have a couple of slides that I can share with you today about the LSS and what we do. But as part of the LSS, we're a group that's predominantly responsible for bringing innovation and expertise in some of the latest SAP technologies. So personally, I've been in projects within the BI space on the predictive side. I've done some dashboarding and Lumira as well, to name a few. I've also had the opportunity to bring some of the latest SAP products to IBM customers and show them all how these products relate to their business and can benefit their business processes. So now I'll pass it over to Matthew, since Anna, who is also part of the LSS, isn't able to make this presentation today. And Matthew can give you a little introduction about himself as well.
Thanks, Kelly. My name is Matthew Poon, and I'm an application innovation service consultant at IBM. I recently joined the lab for SAP Solution Group back in January this year. And since then, I have worked very closely with Kelly and other SAP experts to create business-centric storyboards with the SAP Lumira to demonstrate its capabilities and also its functionality. I'm going to pass it back to Kelly, who will finish the introduction slide.
Fantastic. Thanks, Matthew. So as Matthew and I both mentioned, we're two team members in the IBM's Lab for SAP Solutions, or LSS. So I'm going to go over a brief overview of what the LSS does, and that should provide you with some clarifications on how our work relates to the content of this webinar today. Basically, how to create a great use case in Lumira to add value to your business. So the LSS is a group within IBM's Global Business Services practice, and we're a group that's charged with developing and showcasing end-to-end industry-specific assets powered by SAP's latest solutions within spaces such as HANA, mobility, cloud, as well as analytics. So typically, after we develop these assets, they're then demoed by IBM to our customers to show basically the art of the possible with these new SAP technologies, with the understanding that each client's needs are unique. The assets serve as a discussion and really get the clients thinking about how these SAP tools can be used in their business to improve upon their business processes. So in addition to the assets that we develop and demo, we also hold design thinking workshops, serve as SMEs on client projects, present at SAP events such as Sapphire and TechEd, and we also have a very close relationship with SAP Labs and collaborate with teams there as well. So the next slide provides you with an overview of the types of assets that we currently have in our environment. And as you can see, we have many mobile, analytics, and HANA assets that span industries such as healthcare, retail, TNT, and cross-sector as well. As a result of our efforts to really spread innovation in IBM and at our customers, IBM and LSS have been recognized for their thought leadership and expertise in these arenas. So as part of our recent work, as Lumira is, one of the latest products, our team has really been trying to spread awareness and adoption methodology for SAP Lumira by meeting with our customers to explain Lumira as a tool and show them how Lumira can fit into their business, which brings us to the content of this webinar today. How can you create a great Lumira use case? So this process starts with the understanding of how Lumira fits within each customer's unique self-service scope. So when we go to customers and start talking about Lumira, this normally starts off with the Lumira discussions and an explanation of what self-service actually is, if customers aren't yet familiar with the term. So Lumira as a self-service tool is meant to allow business users to access data and perform analyses without the help of IT. So accordingly, the interfaces are typically intuitive and easy to learn, such as Lumira's drag-and-drop interface. Self-service tools are often meant to make the business users less dependent on IT and perform the data exploration on their own to accelerate time to value. So typically in your ideal Lumira use case, the data, is something that your typical business user is able to understand and then can explore the data, create visualizations to try to determine hidden insights. So moving on to the next slide, what are some of the overall characteristics that really make a great Lumira use case in your business? So the first step in this that we often talk to our customers about is that you want to look for use cases that involve both a data analyst and a decision maker. So the data analyst is going to be a business user who is actually using Lumira as a tool. They upload their data into Lumira and then they start exploring and trying to find hidden insights and determine corrective actions in these insights as a result. Then the business user can put together the Lumira storyboard and pass it along to the decision maker, who can then look through the storyboard and determine whether business strategy should be changed as a result of the findings that Lumira helped the business user come across. So also, use cases that involve data that's easy for business users to understand and consume are also very important to really accelerate that time to value. You don't want your business users to constantly having to go to IT to discuss the data and how they should best use it in this use case. And then also, you should really look for use cases that involve some sort of data exploration aspect. You shouldn't be creating, your Lumira use case with a firm storyline already in place. Lumira really has a great value in performing really simple, easy data exploration tools. So you really want to utilize those capabilities. And then also, it's a good idea to consider use cases that may be repeatable, especially if you have data in HANA. That way, with a new data upload, you can have the same storyboard format and create a totally new storyboard with your updated data. And also, the final bullet that we stress to our customers who are considering using Lumira is you really want to look for use cases that require one big picture insight, one storyline that you can send to your decision maker. But you also want to have those detailed drop downs that allow you to have some further analysis. So with that being said, now we'll go over some of the industry templates that we've created in our environment to provide you as well as some of our customers with concrete examples of storyboards that follow these characteristics. So the first storyboard that we're going to go over today is a human resources storyboard for a retail company that we're going to be calling Lumiraware. We have taken real data, but we've masked it under the company name Lumiraware to keep it anonymous. But to give you a little background on the use case, Lumiraware is a clothing retailer with operations that span across the entire United States. So at the beginning of each year, the Human Resources Department works with the employees in Lumiraware to set specific goals that each employee should be accomplishing throughout the year. And then the percentage of these goals that the employee accomplishes at the end of the year is analyzed by a metric called Employee Performance Index, or EPI. So when the EPI is high, that's a good measure for the Human Resources Department. And when it's low, they want to take corrective action on it. So at the end of 2012, the Human Resources Department noted that EPI was decreasing after performing some data exploration in Lumira, and they wanted to determine what factors were causing this trend. So I'll go to my Prepare tab in Lumira really quickly, and you can see the general types of data that we have. So we have data for a sample of employees, a sample of Lumiraware employees with general characteristics about each of the employees, where they were, salary numbers, the state they're in, as well as EPI. Moving on to the next sheet. We also have just focus group data as well, but I can go back to the story. So then our first storyboard shows the foundation of Lumiraware's EPI study. So the bar chart on the left shows that EPI for both Lumiraware's hourly and salary workers was decreasing from 2008 to 2012. So this was the opposite of the trend that Lumiraware's HR department wanted to be seeing So they decided that they would have to take some sort of corrective action. They just needed to determine what specific corrective action needed to be taken. So they decided to take a sample of states, California, Texas, Georgia, Ohio, and New York, that had a range of EPIs to have a study to determine why EPI had been decreasing in this sample of states in recent years. And then with any study, Lumiraware's HR department first wanted to make sure that the characteristics and distributions in the sample of states that they were studying was representative of their entire operations within the United States. So the pie chart on the left shows the distribution between hourly and salary employees across the entire U.S. And then the pie chart on the right shows the distribution in the test states. So you can see that the distribution between hourly and salary workers between the two were pretty similar, which shows that the sample was a good choice. And then also you can see the bar chart on the bottom is an EPI comparison between the other states as well as the test states. And you can see that these two numbers are approximately the same as well. So Lumiraware's HR department was able to determine that the sample of 5 states that they chosen was representative of the entire U.S. So then if you move to the next board, after Lumiraware determined that this sample was representative, they sent out a survey to all of the employees in the sample of states, basically asking the employees to answer a bunch of questions about EPI, why they think it's decreasing, things that have changed in their stores in recent years, things along those lines. And then they compiled some of the most common phrases in the survey responses. So you can see that, some of the most common survey responses were things like, there's less regional manager visits now in recent years. And a lot of people were concerned they didn't even know what EPI was, being by, what is EPI meaning, phrases such as that. And then also people are talking about training, regional manager turnover. So then Lumiraware's HR department took these most common phrases and then performed analyses based on them to see whether the employees' responses were accurate of trends that were actually occurring in the sample of states, and whether improving upon these metrics would potentially help increase EPI in the coming years. So moving on to the next board, Lumiraware's HR department first analyzed the impact of regional manager visits, because a lot of the survey responses talked about that. So we have a bar and line chart on the left-hand side that shows the relationship between EPI and the average number of regional manager visits from 2008 to 2012. And we can see that these two metrics have a positive correlation, showing that as the number of yearly regional manager visits to each store decreased, EPI was decreasing as well. And our bar chart on the right shows the relationship between regional manager turnover and the number of yearly visits to each store. And you can see that for these two metrics, there is a negative correlation, showing that potentially as a regional manager moved on to another role within the company or left the company, there might not have been a sufficient knowledge transfer going on from one regional manager to the next. So the new regional managers coming in stopped going to their stores as frequently as the old regional managers had. And then if we move on to the next board, Lumiraware's HR department also performed analyses based on training, because multiple survey responses mentioned new hire training as well as promotion-based training. So we have a line chart on the left-hand side that shows the relationship between EPI and the percent of completed training for new employees. And we can see that there's a strong positive correlation between both of these metrics, showing that potentially when new employees were coming into the company, they either didn't complete their training that explained the importance of EPI or what it was. And as a result, these new employees weren't really completing their yearly goals because they weren't totally clear about what EPI was and what their yearly goals should be. And then you also see on the bar and line chart on the right-hand side, there's a positive correlation between EPI and the total training completion percent for all employees who had taken on a new role in each year, showing that when a new employee takes on new responsibilities, they often weren't clear on what exactly they should be accomplishing in their new role, and as a result, their EPI suffered. So Lumiraware's HR department also did a finding where they compared the average number of employees per manager in their stores compared to the average number of employees per manager in some of their competitors' stores. So looking at the table, we can see that for Lumiraware, this number has been increasing in recent years, whereas it's been decreasing for their competitors, suggesting that maybe now that since managers have more employees working under them, they can't sync up with their employees as much as they used to be to talk about EPI and talk about how their performance ratings were coming along, which have been very important in past years. And again, on the line chart on the right, we can see that there's a negative correlation between EPI and the average number of employees per manager as well. So then after determining all of these findings with Lumiraware's HR department, they had to determine whether they should actually implement corrective action for all of these new findings. And as a decision like that is often quite costly, Lumiraware's HR department first wanted to test these corrective action policies in a sample of new states to determine whether making these business strategy changes would have a positive impact on EPI. So the HR department decided to hold a training program for regional managers in the states of Illinois, Arizona, and Florida. So in this training session, the regional managers were taught about a new policy mandating at least 3 visits to each store throughout the year. And then managers were also trained on how to evaluate each store's training program and whether the training program was effective and employees were aware of their yearly goals that they should be accomplishing. And then they were also taught about how to better analyze whether particular stores need more or less employees as well. So the training program happened at the very beginning of Q1 2013, and then at the end of the year, Lumiraware's HR department performed an analysis to see whether the training program was in fact impactful. And you can see in the line chart right here, the blue line represents the average EPI for all of the stores within states that weren't in the training program, and the green line represents the average EPI for the employees that were in the test states. You can see up until 2013, both of these lines were fairly similar. However, at the end of Q1 2013, the EPI in the test states drastically shot up, showing that this training program was definitely impactful and that Lumiraware's HR department had identified the correct metrics that needed to be addressed. So using Lumira, Lumiraware was able to identify, something that could be improved upon in their business, and they could take corrective action as a result. So that gives you an example about how Lumira can be used to perform some HR analyses. So now I'm going to pass it over to Matthew and change storyboards so you can see how Lumira can be used to perform some advertising analyses within the consumer products industry.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. So this storyboard is a storyboard on the consumer product industry that I've been working on for the past couple of weeks. To give you a little bit of background, in early 2012, a company named Lumira Consumer Products International, or also known as LCPI in this scenario, they had to significantly cut the advertising spending. because they have experienced a decrease in profits during the past several years. To reverse this trend, LCPI wanted to reestablish a business strategy that would allow them to once again increase the advertising spending in order to impact more sales and generate additional revenues and identify geographic regions of focus. LCPI used sales data from 2005 to 2012 in order to identify their most successful and least successful satellite brand in terms of net revenue, net profit, and total revenue. They also wanted to look at net revenue by regions and products to determine a geographic area in which they should focus the advertising campaign on in the upcoming years. In addition, they also wanted to conduct an analysis of the advertising method to determine the most effective way to retain and reach more customers. Let's go to the second board. So on this board, it shows the net revenue by brand for LCPI from 2005 to 2012. And we can see that the net revenue for all 6 brands gradually increased from 2005 to 2011. But then from 2011 to 2012, it experienced a sharp decrease. So based on this result, they wanted to identify regions and brands to target and focus on going forward to generate more revenue in the future. Move on to the next one. This board shows the net revenue and operating profits for LCPI's 3 most popular brands. So on the right-hand side, we have 3 visualizations showing the net revenue and operating profits for LCPI's 3 most popular brands. And we have Food Aromas, Spa Scents, the middle one, and then Kitchen Scents, the bottom one. And you can see that it has a very similar trend as the one shown on the previous board. A gradual increase from 2005 to 2011, and then a sharp decrease from 2011 to 2012 in terms of net revenues. And on the left, we have the average profit margins for these 3 brands. So we can see that Food Aromas was at 0.25, Spa Scent was at 0.14, and Kitchen Scent was at 0.11. So based on this, Food Aromas had both the highest profit margin and net revenue from 2005 to 2012. And therefore, that's the brand that LCPI decided to focus and scale in the coming years. And this board is set up very similarly to the previous one. It looks at the other end of the spectrum, the least popular brands. So on the right, we have Food Aromas, we have Tropical, we have Floral Aromas, and also we have aromatherapy lines. On the left, we have the profit margins for these 3 brands. And we can see that Tropical Aromas was at 0.3, Floral Aromas was at 0.17, and aromatherapy line was at 0.85. So we can see that Floral Aromas had the lowest profit margins from 2005 to 2012, which is leading LCPI to consider removing this brand completely from their portfolio. Moving on to the next one. This board is on a geographic analysis on the popular and profitable Food Aromas brand. If you look at the visualization on top, you can see that the net revenue increased the most in Russia and also Brazil. For the 2 visualizations on the bottom, you can see a similar story and can see how popular Food Aromas was in these 2 respective countries. In Russia, back in 2005, food aromas occupy 40% of Russia's net revenue, and it increased to almost 80% in 2012. In Brazil, in 2005, it occupied 60% of Brazil's net revenues, and then it jumped all the way to 80% in 2012. So based on all these three visualizations, LCPI decided to further scale the advertising in Russia and Brazil, since these were the countries that the net revenue increased the most, and the food aromas line was the most popular. Moving on to the next one. This board is on marketing strategy and analysis in terms of usage of online coupons versus traditional coupons. So STPI find that online coupons have become much more popular than traditional paper coupons from newspaper or from the mail. Back in 2005, we can see that the amount of sales generated from online coupon was only 500,000 from the Food Aromas brand. And conversely, for paper coupons, it generated $1.5 million, almost triple the amount from online coupons. Since that period of time, it has reversed dramatically. In 2012, we can see that the amount of sales generated from online coupons for this brand grew to 2.1 million. And conversely, the amount of sales generated from paper coupons dropped to 700,000. And also, the majority of new Food Aromas customers, they were using online coupons in the first purchase, as shown on the graph on the right. You can see that there's a positive correlation between usage of online coupons versus the amount of new customer purchase. So therefore, LCPI decided to increase the offerings of online coupons and reduce the mailing of paper coupons to reduce costs. Moving on to the next slide. The popularity of e-commerce has a huge impact on LCPI's marketing strategy as well. We can see that back in 2005, the amount of sales generated from a traditional retail store was 93%. And conversely, the amount of sales from online shopping was only 6 or 7%. Since then, a lot more customers have been buying the products using the computers or their mobile devices than visiting the traditional brick and mortar store. You can see that in 2012, there was almost an even 50-50 split between the amount of sales from retail store and the amount of sales generated from e-commerce. However, if you look at the visualization on the right, the growth of LCPI's customer reward point program has remained stagnant despite the increase in online traffic. We can see that from 2008 to 2012, the percentage of customers who use their reward points in their purchase has increased very minimally. Therefore, LCPI decided to redesign its customer loyalty program by creating a mobile app that would provide a more customized and personalized shopping experience in order to encourage more purchase among the existing customers. Move on to the next one. This board is on a geographic analysis on the least popular and also least profitable for Aromas brand. So prior to removing this brand line from the portfolio, LCPI conducted a geographic analysis of this brand. And we can see that even though this brand was not popular in countries like the United States or Canada or Russia, only occupying 2-3% of the market shares. This line was very popular in countries like Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, and Chile, occupying 60 to 80% of the market share. Move on to the next. For further analysis, SAP focused on Mexico specifically for this four aromas brand, since Mexico was one of the largest markets. And SAP determined that from 2005 to 2012, most of the net revenue in Mexico was brought in by this four aromas line. Conversely, most of the line's net revenue was from Mexico. So instead of removing four aromas line from the portfolio completely, SAP decided to only offer and advertise this brand in Mexico and countries in South America, like Brazil and Argentina. So this is the end for the storyboards. I think this is a very good example of how business users can use sales data and marketing data and leverage the SAP Lumira tool in order to uncover business intelligence and business insights in order to build a more effective marketing strategies in the future. And now I'm going to pass it back to Kelly for some closing remarks.
So before we do that, we'll go over a very brief overview of an airline analysis as well, and how you can perform financial analyses for industries such as the airline industry. So I'll open up that storyboard. And just to give you a little context about this analysis, we took airline data, which has been masked under different airline names, and the airline we're going to focus on today is an airline called Lumira, which is one of the largest airlines in the United States by revenue. So then Lumira conducted an end-of-the-year financial analysis at the end of 2012 to determine that their gross margin was actually a lot lower than that of their biggest competitor. So they wanted to identify metrics that they could address to improve this in the coming years. Just to give you an overview of the type of data we have data by airlines for metrics such as, aircraft age as well. And we also have yearly data for each of the airlines that have financial metrics, such as, passenger revenue, regional affiliate revenue, total revenue for each of the airlines in every year from 2000 and 2012. So moving on to the first page of the storyboards, where Lumira made first new defining that their gross margins were a lot lower than that of their competitors. So you can see that Lumira and Fresh Air are two of the biggest players in the airline industry. And then you can see that, from 2000 to 2012, originally Lumira had a higher revenue, but in recent years, the difference between both companies' total revenue has been decreasing. And now at the end of 2012, both numbers were approximately the same. And then moving on to the next board, knowing that Fresh Air was Lumira's biggest competitor, they started doing a competitive analysis between them and Fresh Air. And we can see from the bar and line chart on the left-hand side are the blue bars represent gross margin in the years 2009 to 2012 for each of the airlines. And the pink lines represent the percent of canceled flights. So you can see that the gross margins between both airlines from 2009 to 2011 were about the same, but in 2012 there was the biggest difference between these two metrics, which also corresponded to the biggest difference in the percent of canceled flights between both airlines. So Lumira was able to determine that the high number of cancellations was one of the reasons why their gross margin suffered so much in 2012. And then you could also see that from 2000 to 2012, Fresh Air, who's represented by the blue bars, had an operating income that was increasing at an approximately the same rate each year, whereas Lumire's operating income was fairly volatile during this time span, which was something that they wanted to address to make it more consistent going forward. And then moving on to the next board, Lumira did an analysis of fuel costs for the two common airline metrics, available seat miles and revenue passenger miles. So available seat miles are basically a measure of how much revenue potential the airline has, and the revenue passenger miles is the metric of how much revenue the airline actually got from the flight. So we can see that fuel costs had a major upswing during this time span, which had been impacting Lumira's difference between ASM and RPM, suggesting that they weren't really capitalizing on the amount of flights that they had during this time span. Then Lumira also did a route network composition and aircraft capacity analysis, and they could see that the distribution between the types of flights that Lumira had versus Fresh Air were approximately the same. Each color represents a different type of flight, whether it's short haul, whether it's medium haul, a commuter route, or an international long haul route. And Lumira also did an analysis of average aircraft age by airline. And the size of each rectangle is a measure of the average age of the airline, showing that Lumira's average aircraft seat capacity, was a lot higher than it was for Fresh Air, which was something that they wanted to address because they wanted to be able to fill seats in all of their planes. And moving on to this slide, however, we have an analysis of the average aircraft age, which the size of the rectangle represents this metric, showing that Lumira's average aircraft age was a lot higher than that of Fresh Air, suggesting that maybe they weren't getting, they were spending a lot more on fuel when compared to Fresh Air, and they didn't have the best mileage as a result, and they probably had much higher maintenance costs as well, which was something that they could address by potentially adding some new aircraft to their fleet. As we all know, airlines are often adding additional fees for flights now, so Lumira wanted to perform an analysis to see how their fees compared to that of Fresh Air. And we can see that the blue line on the leftmost chart is a measure of the baggage fees for Fresh Air, and then the green line is a measure of the baggage revenue for Lumira. And we can see that Lumira was charging a lot less for baggage, which was something that they could increase in the coming years to improve upon profit. And then the same could be seen for cancellation fees as well. Fresh Air had much higher cancellation fees than Lumira did. And these days, a lot of the profit in the airline industry comes from these fees. So that's something that Lumira decided to address in the coming years as well. Then Lumira also performed one last analysis, which was a geographic analysis. So they took a sample of passengers by region, and they revealed that the highest concentration of their passengers fly from or through California, which is seen in the geochloropleth chart here on the left. And they also fly to Florida and Texas as well. And then we see in the heat chart at the bottom, the routes that have the highest aggregate ticket price and passengers are typically, for example, California has the highest aggregate ticket price as well as passengers. But we look at, in the text, Lumira was serving the top cities of New York, Washington, D.C., and Miami, none of which were in California, which we can see Fresh Air, that was one of their biggest stops, and potentially one of the reasons why they had such a higher gross margin. So in the coming years, Lumira decided to add some more trips to the California regions as well to improve upon their gross margins. So we've given you guys a couple of industry templates on how Lumira can be used in a number of different industries and across disciplines, whether it's, sales, finance, advertising, human resources, along those lines. And I think each of these storyboards really indicated the 5 characteristics that we think make a great business use case for Lumira. They all involve data that's easy for your typical business user to understand, and there's definitely that exploratory aspect to the data where the business users come across a finding and then they try to find additional variables that could explain that change in business processes. So with that being said, I'd like to thank you